Heat indices of 112 to 114 degrees are spiking along the Carolina coast. 1 week from today, those exact same coastal cities could be a full 30 degrees cooler. And a stalled weather boundary is threatening to drop 5 to 8 inches in isolated spots nearby. Point is, this pattern is doing 3 completely different and extreme things simultaneously tonight. We're breaking down the heat, the severe weather, the flooding, and the relief all in one place. So let's start with the heat because several states are dealing with dangerous conditions tonight. The National Weather Service has issued excessive heat warnings across Iowa, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Arizona. Heat advisories are also in effect along the California coast and across parts of Florida tonight. Nashville, Tennessee is under an excessive heat warning. And so is the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area. That is a remarkably wide geographic spread for dangerous heat across this country at one moment. Down along the coastal Carolinas, the situation is especially extreme and dangerous right now. The heat index in Charleston and the Lowcountry is straight up expected to hit 112. Near Myrtle Beach and Horry County, feels like temperatures today have already reached 114. Dale over in Toledo messaged tonight asking Tom, is it really that hot down along the coast? And Dale, that 114-degree heat index near the coast is genuinely dangerous territory. That excessive heat warning stays in effect through Thursday afternoon. Then Friday brings more of the same. Phoenix, Arizona is dealing with its own dangerous level of heat across the desert southwest tonight. Des Moines, Iowa, Topeka, Kansas, and Oklahoma City are all sitting under excessive heat warnings today. Translation: heat alerts are spread from the Pacific coast all the way to the Carolinas tonight. So which direction do temperatures go from here? Because the answer might surprise you. That's where the Cooldown story enters the picture, and we'll get to it in serious detail shortly. But first, the severe weather picture across the central country deserves your full attention tonight. The Storm Prediction Center's outlook today shows a level 3 severe weather risk across 3 states. Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas are sitting inside that elevated severe weather zone as of tonight. And honestly, widespread severe thunderstorms threatening hail and damaging winds across the high plains is wild. The maps show a slight risk zone surrounding that elevated area across several additional surrounding states. Large hail, damaging winds, and an isolated tornado cannot be ruled out across those risk zones tonight. Margaret down in Lake Charles, Louisiana, is watching tonight's setup very closely from the Gulf Coast. She said, Tom, the central country activity has been nonstop, and this setup looks like another serious one. And Margaret, that is absolutely the right read because the picture changes significantly heading into Thursday. On Thursday, the Storm Prediction Center is watching an even larger piece of the country. Forecasters say roughly 50% of the nation could be under some storm threat level on Thursday. That breaks down into 3 separate marginal risk zones and 2 separate slight risk areas across the country. The WPC surface analysis map for Thursday shows thunderstorm coverage from Nebraska all the way eastward. Heavy rain and flash flooding hatching now covers portions of Iowa and adjacent areas for tonight's period. And on Thursday, a separate severe thunderstorm zone highlights parts of the Dakotas on the northern end. Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast all need to stay alert for Thursday's activity. The Southeast stays inside the active weather pattern through Thursday as well. No break coming there. So the severe weather picture is active coast to coast for at least the next 48 hours. And the flooding story building underneath all this is going to be the bigger headline before it ends. Keep these numbers in mind. 114 on the coast, 5 to 8 inches possible, 30 cooler. Now into Friday because that's when a new wave of energy adds another complete layer to this pattern. A short wave from the northwest pushes into the region Friday afternoon and evening with real upper-level punch. That system is capable of producing isolated severe storms across parts of the interior southeast on Friday. Western North Carolina and the Lowcountry are both areas forecasters are watching for Friday afternoon. And as Friday rolls into Saturday night, an additional disturbance comes alive rolling through Tennessee. Frank in Springfield Illinois is right in the middle of all this activity through the Great Lakes. He said, Tom, the Midwest has been absolutely nonstop active, and this stretch just keeps building. And Frank, you're right on the money because Saturday brings yet another round across a different zone. Saturday, that disturbance sparks strong to severe thunderstorms from the Piedmont through the Midlands. The zone from the western Carolinas through the Midlands down into the Atlanta metro area is on watch. Saturday will not be a complete washout, but somebody in that corridor gets significant storms, for sure. Here's the thing about Sunday, though. That's when something remarkable starts to enter the picture. A front begins to push south on Sunday, and cooler air finally gets its chance to move in. Cities feeling like 100 degrees today could feel dramatically and noticeably different by Sunday. But the southeast has a flooding layer quietly building in the background that deserves serious attention. This is where the stalled frontal boundary story becomes the most important piece of this whole pattern. A boundary is going to park itself flat out over the southeast for multiple days in a row. When a frontal boundary stalls like this, storms can ride along it in repeating waves for days. Forecasters call that training, and it is the setup that most often produces the highest rain totals. The areas targeted for training storms include Kentucky and Tennessee as the primary flooding hotspot. West Virginia and Virginia are also inside the zone where training storms could drop very heavy rainfall. And as that boundary sags south later in the period, Atlanta, Columbia, and Charlotte enter the picture. European model data is showing 2 to 4 inches of rain for parts of the area over days. But here is the part forecasters openly admit the models are probably significantly underdoing tonight. In isolated spots, training thunderstorm setups like this one can drop 5, 6, 7, or 8 inches. The models just cannot capture that kind of localized rain total until we get into the short range. Earl out in western South Dakota knows exactly what it means when forecasters talk about training storms. He said, Tom, that's the kind of setup that catches communities completely off guard with flash flooding. And Earl is dead right because training storm flash flood events are among the most dangerous setups possible. The first hotspot on the flooding map centers on Kentucky and Tennessee, extending up through West Virginia. Charleston, South Carolina is showing 4 inches of rainfall in European model output through next week. Albany, Georgia is also showing close to 3 inches of rain in that same model data. A solid corridor of elevated rainfall is being shown through South Carolina and into southern Georgia. So that's 114 degrees today, 8 inches stalling over the south, 30 cooler coming. Sandra over in Alexandria, Virginia is asking the exact right question about how all this connects. She asked, Tom, does the extreme heat and the flooding potential somehow connect back to the same cause? And Sandra, they absolutely do connect because the same ridge of high pressure is driving both threats. The western ridge forces the jet stream to divert around it and creates a trough over the east. That jet stream becomes nearly stagnant, and that is exactly where the flooding potential explodes. A stagnant flow means storms ride the same path over the same communities for hours or days straight. And on top of the boundary flooding, there is now a tropical influence entering the picture this period. Areas of rotation and spin are being detected in the Gulf of Mexico and off the Carolina coastline. When those spinning areas interact with a stalled, moisture-loaded boundary, rainfall totals compound fast. The European model is showing increased spin developing near the Carolina coast around early next week. If that happens, it adds even more lift to an atmosphere already primed for significant flooding. Meteorologists are watching 2 potential zones where that development could occur over the next 10 days. Zone 1 is off the Carolina coastline, and Zone 2 is near Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. Forecasters are now noting a 20 to 30% chance of tropical development off the Carolina coast. That is middle to end of next week, which is close enough that it cannot simply be ignored. The European ensemble is showing something trying to organize near the Florida Panhandle area as well. Margaret in Lake Charles, this tropical development piece is especially relevant for the Gulf Coast tonight. If any homegrown development occurs along this stalled boundary, rainfall totals jump significantly higher. Tampa, Ocala, Orlando, and Gainesville have all been asking where their heavy rainfall is coming from. The European model now suggests the Gulf Coast heavy rain pattern could arrive within the next 10 days. Florida Panhandle, southern Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana are inside the heavy rain window. That is a wide corridor of concern for prolonged heavy rainfall stretching from the Panhandle to the Carolinas. And if that 20 to 30% tropical development chance verifies, all of those totals increase. This is no longer just a rain event. It is shaping up as a multi-day flooding pattern. 2 to 4 inches is the floor, and isolated totals of 5 to 8 inches are possible. So here is exactly where I want to hear directly from you about your city tonight. Tell me your city in the comments and whether you're in the heat zone or the flooding zone. And if there is a specific region you want a detailed breakdown for, leave that below as well. Your city could absolutely be the next detailed forecast we dig into, so leave it below. So let's recap before we get into the cool down. 114, 8 inches, 30 degrees of relief. Relief is absolutely on the way, and both major forecast models are now consistently pointing toward it. The front pushing south on Sunday is the first piece of genuinely cooler air entering the southeast. Behind that front, temperatures drop noticeably and feels like numbers drop even faster than actual temperatures. By Monday, much of the southeast swaps its triple-digit heat index readings for highs around 80 degrees. In Charleston and Myrtle Beach, Monday, temperatures are being forecasted around 75 to 76. If that verifies, that is a 30-degree actual temperature drop in just 1 week for the coast. Going from 112-degree heat indices to a high of 75 is a remarkable turnaround. Tuesday through Wednesday, temperatures stay refreshingly comfortable, mostly in the low to mid-80s. The northeast wind responsible for this cool down is the key feature driving the change through Monday. Dale and Toledo will feel this pattern shift across the Ohio Valley starting Saturday and Sunday. He said, Tom, the whole Ohio Valley is beyond ready for a serious break from this relentless heat. And Dale, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Cincinnati should all see meaningful improvement by mid-next week. Here is where the long-range models get really interesting for the second half of this month. The GFS model, which has been the more aggressive of the two, is showing something bold for mid-July. Around July 15th through the 17th, GFS is showing 10 to 15 degrees below normal temperatures. If your average mid-July high is 80 degrees, that means actual highs around 65 or 70. That is not just comfortable for July, that is downright cold for the middle of the entire summer. So check the math. 114 today, 75 Monday, and 65 to 70 by the 15th. And the GFS model does not stop there because it shows another cool down arriving around July 20th. That second cool down is even more aggressive, showing 20 to 25 degrees below normal territory. If average summer highs are in the 80s, that puts temperatures in the 60s during mid-July. The European model is more conservative, but also trending toward cooling beginning around July 10th. It shows 7 to 15 degrees below normal on a more gradual and measured timeline overall. But here's the key takeaway. Both models are now trending cooler, and that agreement matters enormously. GFS total precipitation also shows well above average rainfall for the Rocky Mountain range coming up. That moisture stream along the southern jet stream is feeding into a very active 2-week weather pattern. Frank in Springfield, this prolonged active stretch is absolutely worth watching all the way through July. He knows when the jet stream locks into a pattern like this, it can hold for weeks. Let's do a rapid-fire city breakdown so you know exactly where your area stands in this pattern. Nashville, Tennessee is under an excessive heat warning today and gets relief starting around Sunday. Memphis, Tennessee stays hot through Saturday and then enters the heart of the training storm flood zone. Louisville, Kentucky, and Lexington are primary concerns for flooding as that training setup develops early next week. Cincinnati and Columbus. Ohio need to watch Thursday and Friday for active severe weather coming through. Knoxville, Tennessee, and Chattanooga sit right in the corridor where the flooding threat becomes most serious. Earl in western South Dakota said, Tom, stacking heat zones and flood zones on one map is wild. And Earl nails it because the two overlapping threats affect communities in completely different ways. Chicago, Illinois sits right in the middle of Thursday and Friday's active severe weather corridor. St. Louis, Missouri is watching both flooding potential and active severe weather through Friday evening. Sandra over in Alexandria, Virginia needs to watch the Thursday overnight period and Friday for storms. The Mid-Atlantic, including Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and Richmond, should stay weather aware through Friday. Philadelphia and New York City need to watch the Thursday and Friday storm potential very closely. Raleigh, Charlotte, and Greenville, South Carolina are watching the flooding threat grow later in the period. Tampa, Orlando, and Gainesville, Florida. The European model is now showing your heavy rainfall pattern developing. Wichita and Oklahoma City remain under heat alerts, while also watching for severe storms developing to the west. Denver, Colorado is watching the front range storm threat as the active overall pattern builds across the region. Seattle and Portland are in the clear for the moment, but watching elevated fire weather risk carefully. Atlanta, Georgia needs to watch Saturday for significant storm potential as that boundary dips southward. Here's the full picture. 114 today, 8 inches possible, 30 degrees cooler by Monday. So if your city has not come up yet, leave your location in the comments section below tonight. Tell me your city and whether you are dealing with heat or storms or flooding tonight. And if you want a regional breakdown coming up, leave that below and we will cover it. Your comments shape exactly where this coverage focuses next, and every single one gets read and considered. If you are under an excessive heat warning tonight, limit your outdoor time during afternoon hours. Drink water constantly. Check on elderly neighbors, and make sure pets have shade and cool water nearby. And if flash flood warnings drop for your area, never attempt to drive through moving or standing water. Dale mentioned that communities across southern Indiana have already seen flash flooding multiple times already. And that reality is exactly what these communities are staring down with another heavy rain period ahead. Dale, Margaret, Frank, Earl, and Sandra all agree this stretch is one of the most complex all year. The heat is dangerous right now. The flooding is building. And the 30-degree cool down is finally coming. That pattern is absolutely worth your full attention over the next several days across the entire country. 114 degrees today, 8 inches of flooding possible, 30 degrees cooler by Monday. That is where this country's weather stands tonight, and knowing it beats getting caught off guard. The watches are active, the heat is not done, and this pattern still has days to run.